The Michael Berry Show.
So there is a video that a guy made that's been going around, and several listeners have sent it to me. And it's a guy claiming to prove that the Sig Sauer P320 trigger will fire independent of being touched, which, as you can imagine, is a huge problem. That's how somebody gets killed or, at a minimum, severely injured. And I wondered, is there anything to this? Why do people keep sending me this? I've had some former Sig Sauer partisans telling me that this is very concerning and needs to be brought to light. Now, I've known some folks over the years who are huge Sig Sauer fans. And then it turns out that there is a police officer in Houston, 35-year veteran, named Richard Fernandez Jr., who on January 20th, 2025, he was working traffic control for a parade, and apparently his Sig Sauer went off and shot him in the foot. And he is filing a lawsuit against Sig Sauer. This is an issue. Sig Sauer has created a website called p320truth.com because this is coming up apparently quite a bit. There are lots of people claiming this happened to them. Rick Fernandez, 35-year HPD officer, is our guest. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Tell me, if you would, what happened January 20th, 2025.
Okay. Well, I work on a crime suppression team out of Kingwood, and they had brought us down for a parade they were going to have on MLK Day. And so we were given an assignment to do some traffic direction at MLK and Airport Boulevard. And so that's where we were at. And I came out. We were told, given our assignment, and we were told to go ahead and get on post. We went out to our post, and I exited my patrol car, and I walked around to the passenger side to start directing traffic and have some people to turn on to MLK a certain direction. And I made eye contact with the driver that was coming towards me. And I started to point. I think I started to point, but I heard a pop. And then at that point, I kind of got a little confused because it sounded like my gun had popped, but it didn't sound like a gunshot. So I looked down, and I saw that I had a hole in my pants around my calf, and that I could see that I was starting to bleed because it was coming out, dripping down my calf down onto the ground. And I told one of the people I was working with that I think I'd been shot. And so, again, we didn't hear a gunshot. We heard a pop. So he walked me around to the driver's side of my car. He laid me down in the car. And at that point, people started, I guess he radioed, people started coming towards me to help. But they started putting tourniquets on me. And I was confused because my gun never came out of the holster. It was in the holster the entire time. I didn't even touch my gun, and it fired. So anyway, I was transported to Herman Hospital, and they removed the bullet went in the upper part of my calf, went down my calf all the way to my ankle, and they removed it the next day surgically.
I have very well developed calves. How would you describe the development level of your calves? Some people have really just kind of straight up and down legs, and some people, like a lot of Asians, will have really big muscular calves. Where do you fit in that?
Well, I was a college football player, and I'm older now, but I am very much an indoor rower. So I row.
Probably a lot like me.
I row a lot. So anybody that knows me knows I talk about rowing.
If I'm walking along in short pants and I flex my calves in front of people that don't know me, a lot of times people will comment, "Wow, that's an you're probably getting that as well."
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't wear shorts that often, I guess, but
Well,
I
you
have.
and we're
I feel
birds
like
of a feather. I understand where you are. So at what? So I'm thinking that the natural reaction for you, never having touched your weapon, is that somebody else had to shoot you. I mean, I'm thinking your first thought had to be, well, I know I didn't touch my gun. Somebody shot me. No? Or was the
well,
angle what told you?
No, it was just it didn't. I didn't hear a gunshot. I heard a pop, and so it confused me on how did my gun fire in the holster, and I'm not pulling it out. I'm not touching my gun. How did it fire? That couldn't be my gun, and I'm not sure if I felt a little recoil on my hip, but my gun never moved from the holster.
Yeah.
So I was confused. I didn't feel like anyone was shooting at me because I felt like I would have heard the gunshot. I've heard enough gunshots that I would recognize the gunshot, but I heard a pop, and it was because it was locked in the holster.
And you think that, sound dampened it?
Yes.
Interesting. Well, a 35-year veteran, you've been to the range a fair number of times, and you've heard enough rounds go off, so I think you'd know the difference between a pop and a gunshot. It's just amazing that it's on your hip and it goes off, and then you might have, I don't know, I'm just spitballing, you might have gone into shock. Your body might have been in a shock that you were not aware of.
There's no doubt I was in shock.
So they take you to the hospital, and my understanding is that you lost feeling in your, is it your right or left foot?
Right.
Okay, so the bullet goes through your calf, down the leg, and does it lodge in the foot or does it come out?
It lodges in next to my ankle.
Oh, is it still there?
No, they took it out.
Okay, so tell me about the process from there. I'm assuming that's pretty painful. I'm assuming you have some surgeries.
Yes, surgery to remove the bullet, and I was out for about 3 months, and then I returned back to duty. But as far as the pain and as far as the surgeon at Herman was fantastic, Dr. Eastman, fantastic. And my leg looks about the same as it did before, and I do have some scarring along my leg.
Yeah.
It kind of followed the trace of the bullet, and I've had to have lots of physical therapy, and I've had to do lots of rehabilitation to it, and I still don't have feeling in part of my leg.
I can only imagine. What size round does that fire?
It was a 9mm.
I'm not the judge in your case, but I can't imagine what level of anger I would feel if I believed that a gun that I was wearing discharged without me touching it and caused me all this. Can you hold with us for just a moment? Sergeant Rick Fernandez Jr. is our guest. He says that on January 20th, 2025, while he was working as a police officer for the Houston Police Department, a 35-year veteran, his service weapon discharged, a Sig Sauer P320. So so Scott Cisco, your lawyer, how did you know to find him? Is this his expertise? And then kind of take us through that case, if you would.
Okay. First of all, I'm not a sergeant, just a senior police officer. Because I know a lot of policemen listen to you, and they're going to be giving me a hard time.
Oh, did I say sergeant?
I think I'm. Yes, you did.
I'm sorry.
That's
sorry.
okay.
Okay.
That's okay. Yes, Scott is my attorney. Scott's been a friend of mine since I was, for a long time. Before my police career started, since elementary school, I've known Scott. So we've been friends forever. And so I called Scott on the day it happened to let him know what happened. He also knows my wife, knew her before we were married. I mean, I've known Scott for so long. So I called him to let him know what was going on. And Scott came down and met with me down there. And I just felt like Scott was such a good friend, I had to let him know. And yes, he is an attorney. We actually rode together at HPD. when we rode out of Beech Nut. So, I've known Scott forever.
And so you send a demand letter to them prior to a lawsuit, or you filed a lawsuit? Kind of walk me through how that has gone so far and how they've responded.
Well, I was, contacted Scott, talked to Scott, and basically told Scott what I wanted to do, because this does not need to happen to any other police officer or any other citizen or any other person in the military. This does not need to happen. This is a malfunction of their weapon. So Scott, he did what, he's an attorney, so he did what he needed to do. As far as the legal process, and I know you're an attorney as well, I don't know what was filed after that or how the sequence went after that, because a lot of that was me recovering. This wasn't just a physical injury. This was very much a mental injury. And you've been around enough policemen to know that, we kind of joke around and give each other a hard time. It was a very embarrassing situation for me to happen, even though I didn't do anything wrong. And I was telling people that from 10 minutes after I got shot, that I didn't do anything wrong. This gun fired on its own. And, because I know how policemen are, and they give you a hard time, and it's jokingly, but I didn't want to hear it. And like I said, mentally, knowing the embarrassment that I felt like I'd brought to myself and my family, I was upset about that, because and I kept replaying things in my head of how this happened, because I didn't touch my gun and it fired. And so, to say that someone can do that and not try and figure out, how did it fire in the holster? I mean, it wasn't just hanging out of the holster. It was locked in. Our holsters are they're very, they have to be a level 3 holster. So it's locked in, it's secured, and it's still fired.
6 Sauer writes, the P320 cannot under any circumstances discharge without a trigger pull. This is verified through extensive testing by 6 Sauer, the U.S. military, elite law enforcement agencies, and independent laboratories. And then they say, uninformed, agenda-driven parties recently launched attacks against 6 Sauer's most tested, most reliable, and most durable product, the P320 pistol. This misinformation causes confusion and uncertainty among our valued customers. And yet, you're not the only person filing a lawsuit. 2 years ago, the AP reported that a lawsuit filed in U.S. federal court in Concord, New Hampshire, claimed over 100 incidents of the P320 pistol unintentionally discharging when the user believed they did not pull the trigger. That's a lot of people making a claim for 6 Sauer to say it's not true. Now, if it is true, the company may not go bankrupt, but this would be a massive hit, and on a product that they presumably sell a lot of. So you've got two sides locked up. But I'll tell you, if I was you and I was certain I didn't pull the trigger or in no way contributed to this gun firing, I'd do nothing short of making them pay. That would be for certain. What would be the proper response? What do you believe they should do?
Well, I think, first of all, they need to get rid of the gun or fix the gun. The gun has a problem. And, I've been around guns, and I'm not someone that knows a whole lot about guns, but I've been around guns because I've been a policeman, had HPD for 35 years, and I was a Bel Air policeman before that. So I've been around guns for a little while, and I have never heard or never seen or never a rumor about a gun firing in the holster without someone pulling the trigger. Never heard any gun doing that. Never heard of another SIG model doing that. Just the one P320. And everybody has the same story. And when I bought this gun, I had never heard anything bad about this gun. And, it wasn't until even after that I learned about the drop test stuff that was going on with it. So as far as I knew, the gun was a good gun, and I didn't know about all these problems. But it's a flawed gun, and it has a problem. And, I guess they're just going to bury their head in the sand on it and, keep making money off of it.
I think I read somewhere that you've only used this gun for a few years. My brother, who was an over 30-year law enforcement officer, carried a Glock, and his answer for that was the long trigger pull. That was the thing he carried. Durability, but the long trigger pull was a really big deal compared to some guys that still carried revolvers. And he just believed in that, didn't want an accidental discharge. What did you carry before the SIG?
I carried a Smith & Wesson 4506, and that was a gun I carried. I carried with when I was partnered with Scott Cisco. We carried the same gun, and they quit making that gun 20 years ago. It was an old gun, but it was a dependable gun. It was my gun. I knew how to use it. But I decided, I guess a little later in my career, that I was going to try something different because that gun was a big gun and it was a heavy gun, and I'm not as strong as I used to be. So I thought, well, let me better myself here. And so once I did purchase the SIG, of course I got a new holster with it. So we practiced a lot with these guns because I wanted to get proficient with not only the gun but the holster as well, because I needed a new holster to go with it. So I did. Me and some other people on my team, we went out and we shot a lot. So we again wanted to get proficient with the weapon, wanted to get proficient with the holster.
35 years. How long were you a Bel Air police officer before that?
From 88 to 90, and I started HPD in 90.
So you're going on 40 years as a law enforcement officer. That is a career longer than probably all but 1 or 2% of law enforcement. That's impressive. How long would you have continued to be an officer had this not happened?
Well, I don't know. I just got a big pay raise, so I mean, come on. I don't know. A couple more years. I like I said, I try and stay in shape. I know that HPD has a lot of younger officers, and I want to be able to. I don't want to be the weak link of my unit.
Interesting. And if what you're doing on that Kingwood group, that's not that's a young man's game. I mean, that's impressive that this many years in that you are doing that. Obviously, you were on a traffic duty when all of this happened. Have you heard from other law enforcement or other folks across the country who say, hey, this same thing happened to me?
I have not heard from anybody, but I thought said he had heard from somebody.
Well, if you've got a case with over 100 people claiming that it happened to them, at some point you start to wonder why this particular weapon is getting so many complaints with presumably a similar set of circumstances. I don't know. I haven't read the pleadings, but it's incredibly disturbing. A product malfunction of any sort, whether it's unsafe at any speed or the Pinto and the little bladder that was spilling and people were caught. It's upsetting, and it's upsetting when you get the sense, which we're only hearing your case, not Sig Sauer's, but when you get the sense that a company is making a decision that the life of customers, that their life doesn't have any value, all that matters is what they're making off the product. I think it frustrates people. I think it angers people. And I can only imagine what you're thinking. A healthy man who now has a crippling injury from something that you feel you did nothing to contribute to. That'd piss me off pretty good.
Well, after I got over, the rehab and therapy, and I started to think about it a little bit, it did make me mad because it could have happened to anybody. It could have happened to a citizen. It could have happened to another police officer, someone in the military, whoever has this gun, and a lot of people have this gun. So it did make me mad, and to hear what you're saying, Sig's response to that is, that makes me mad as well because my gun was in the holster, and I wasn't touching that gun or that holster when it fired. It just fired. And so for them to say that, then they're not, they're just turning their head the other way and burying it in the sand.
One listener writes, SIG has a military contract for the P320, the M18. worth $580 million, I believe. This is a big deal to them financially. Very interesting. Another listener writes, unsafe pistol. Czar, lots of bad news about the SIG M18, which is the P320 that you were carrying, going off accidentally. An airman was just killed days ago. It is a striker-fired design, not as safe as a good old hammer-fired pistol. You never want to carry a live round in a striker-fired pistol. But I think not carrying a live round is not an option when you're an officer. Several people have emailed that you shouldn't have a live round chambered, but I don't think that's practical. I don't think anybody's ever been on the streets when they make a statement like that.
Absolutely correct. We don't have time to rack that pistol when you're taking gunfire. It needs to be ready to go, and we have to protect the citizens first, and so it has to be ready to fire.
Well, Officer Rick Fernandez, Jr., I first of all thank you for 35 years of serving Houston Police Department. A couple of years before that in Bel Air. You've obviously committed your life to it. You deserve better. I hope for the absolute best for you. Thanks for sharing your story with us, and hopefully good things to come for you, sir.
Thank you very much for having me on.